All right. So, hey everybody, thanks for joining. I'm excited to introduce you to my colleague and friend, Spencer Norman, who is an assistant professor of graphic design at my alma mater, California University of Pennsylvania in southwestern PA. Thanks for joining me, Spencer. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, RJ.
How the hell are you?
I'm good. I'm sort of good. You know, I'm self-isolating, and I'm getting very used to the walls that I live within, and
Yeah.
so it's a big change.
Well, it looks like you got your guitar in the background.
Yeah, I've got my. Isn't it weird with Zoom? It's sort of like, oh my God, where can I set up that doesn't look awful? Because we live in quite a small house that is going through some sort of like remodeling thing. So it either looks like a bomb's gone off or, you know, so I'm not trying to be pretentious here, but
Right.
no, I sort of like about a couple of years ago, I got back into, I've always been into music, but I got back into playing music.
Okay.
So
Was that a bass guitar or a six
there's a
string?
bass guitar and a
Okay.
six string up there. So, you know.
Cool. I did not get the musical genes from my brothers are like prodigies. It's ridiculous. They've got
Really?
perfect pitch. They know exactly what to do as soon as they pick up any instrument. I didn't get any of that. I got all the visual arts skills, and then like the skills to like not fundamentally wreck your life at any given moment. So so I think it's a good trade-off there. Yeah, so I'm glad we got to connect. I had wanted to connect obviously with you this past academic year, but I left.
Right, yeah,
Yeah,
we
I
talked
left
about, didn't we?
Youngstown. So
Yeah, yes, and I went up there and visited
what'd you think?
with the artist lecture series thing, which I think you were part of,
Yeah.
or you were part of the invite, and yeah, I mean it was fairly snowy out there, and had a nice little venue. It was good. It
Yeah,
was,
the McDonough, if they had you speak there,
yeah,
it is always great to have folks
yeah,
there
really
for
nice,
sure.
really nice.
So you're a graphic designer. Do you teach graphic design? I'm interested in, where you got that itch. What was that moment you realized like design is it for me?
Uh, I, I can still very clearly remember it, and it's a story that I include in my, you know, we all as professors go through the promotion, jumping through ring bullshit stuff, right? And I
Yeah.
include this in every single sort of like promotion document, and why do you want to be tenured and all of this sort of thing, and um, I was I was 11 years old, and we had a new math teacher who also doubled up as our art teacher at school, which is a really weird combination in my eyes. A really weird
Yeah.
combination. You know, I always think that either you visually you're good or you're good at math, but the two don't ever cross unless you're John Mader or something like that. You know, working at MIT. But anyway.
Sure.
So she was really cool, and it was like, oh my God, this is a cool teacher. You know, you just knew she was cool. She didn't necessarily dress really cool. Miss Maloney, she was cool. She didn't dress. There was something just like cool about her, and she set us a competition, and she said, I want you to design a record cover. And this is in the days when record as you can see behind, you know,
Right.
record covers were sort of like 12 point something inches square. And she said, I want you to design a record cover. You can do anything that you want. This was in art class, not in math class. You can do anything that you want. And my boyfriend works at Virgin Records, right? And Virgin Records had only just, you know, I mean, this was in probably the late 70s. Virgin Records was still pretty new. And she said, and he's got a load of swag, all of these T-shirts and pins and whatever. And we're going to give these out, and whoever wins gets the big prize of his
Right.
T-shirts and whatever. So I thought, yeah, I'll go for this. And I designed a record cover. I can't even remember who it was for. I think it was for an imaginary band, and it had sort of like, you know, I mean, this was the late 70s, and we were all
Some
scared.
thinly veiled popular band, right? With a
Yeah,
fictitious
yeah. No,
name, yeah.
actually, I do. I remember the band. The band was called MAD, which stood for Mutually Assured Destruction, because I was
Yep.
quite really political as an 11 or 12-year-old, and I used to go on CND marches in England, campaign for nuclear disarmament. So there was this big sort of like mushroom cloud coming out of the record with a, I don't know, like a lightning strike coming through it, something like that. Anyway,
Right.
and I won, and I said, I really enjoyed doing this. You know, I was just getting into music at that stage as well. So it was like the you know, late 70s, early 80s, really interesting time for music as well. And I said, you know, what do you call these people that design record covers? She said, they're called graphic designers. And I used to be one, but then I decided to come back and start teaching. And I'm like, oh my God, that's where she met her boyfriend at Virgin Records. And so it was that point on, apart from a brief sort of flirtation with wanting to become a librarian for some weird reason for about a year, I thought, oh yeah, I'll become a librarian. I'll just, you know, stick around with some dusty books. Other than that point, I have never, that was it. It was always, you know, unfortunately, by the time I graduated, the LP, as we knew it at the time of my youth, was dead and been replaced by something sort of like this big, you know. Little did I know that they would be coming back again. Yeah, so that was the point, really. And I thought, I'm going to go into the music industry, and I'm just going to have the coolest job designing record covers for the rest of my life and work with great bands. So it was this sort of like my two interests at the time were music and sort of like anything visual and design. And my mum also had like she used to, whenever she did the housework, she would listen to jazz.
Yeah.
So we had all these Blue Note covers, you know, and I would just look at these amazing Blue Note covers of Thelonious Monk and Miles Davis and think, oh my God, these are so cool, you know, with the sort of like duotone photos and whatever. So it was sort of all of that.
Awesome. And then, so you've been designing ever since, basically.
Yeah, really. I mean, you know, the love of music got me into, you know, I started playing in bands from the age of 12, and I would always design the logos that we had that we would paint on the back of our jackets or whatever naff thing, you know, and design the flyers that we would put around the social clubs that we played at or whatever it was, you know. Yeah, so yeah. And then, you know, did design at school, and then went off and started my college career.
What are you listening to now, by the way?
What am I listening to now?
Yeah.
Oh God, it's weird because of these subscription services that you have, you know. I mean, I don't really listen to, even though I've got a record player behind me and LPs up here, you know, I mostly listen online. So I think the last one was some remixes of Jamiroquai or something. I listen to a lot of dance music, really loud, to sort of like cheer myself up in these crazy times, and you know.
Yeah, something upbeat.
Yeah,
some personality.
Yeah. I mean, I love soul and funk music, and I'm a big disco fan as well. I love that sort of stuff.
You know, I've always enjoyed the blend of musicians and designers. I've found that, you know, especially like if you're a guitar players tend, the ones I've had in class before have tended to be like really good designers, and it's because they've spent so much time looking at album artwork, you know, band merchandise and stuff like that. And I've always enjoyed the assignment where they have to translate sound visually.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to do that?
We had a crazy typographer at my degree program, a visiting typographer who she was an expressive typographer, and she came in for a day's workshop and made us in the morning. We had to go outside and collect materials to make the brushes and implements that we would then dip in ink and make expressive typography with. So, and then we had to sort of like come in and make brushes out of grass and weird and twigs and whatever, and then that was how that was then, you know, we went on to the sort of like express music, express sound. Yeah, there was somebody on my master's that was doing something about one of the projects about that. I sort of get them to do a project like that in my visual communication 1 class.
Yeah, you know, it just occurred to me. So I was teaching a class called Digital Fine Art at La Roche University when I started my teaching career. And one of the projects that I had them do was this sound translation. Digital Fine Art was specifically meant for non-design or non-art majors. So if you're in urban planning, you can take a Photoshop class. If you're in mathematics, you can take a Photoshop class. And the math students did really, really well at this project, especially wherein, you know, you could actually see how they utilize like this internal mathematical sort of skill set that they had, but and then, you know, articulated that in their design. You could
Yeah.
actually see it. It was super cool.
The only time I ever really got into math was when we would look at like number sequences, like the Fibonacci sequence, and which seems to me very, very sort of like rhythmical, you know. So the bit I get into with music is like the rhythmical side, which is the same as, you know, I mean, I'm a typographer, I would say, more than a designer. You know, I'm a graphic designer, absolutely, but I love typography. And, you know, type is much the same as musical notation. You know, those 26 little characters that we use are just like musical notes to me, you know. So it's whatever I've done has always, weirdly enough, been about sound, you know, as well. And I can't read music anymore. I used to be able to read music, because I was made to play the cello when I was at school, and every moment of it. So I used to be able to remember it, and then I think I just like wiped it from my memory because it was an awful experience.
That's okay. I mean, music is something you feel.
Yeah, right? and so when I'm playing, you know, I look at the patterns that my fingers are making when I'm playing, and I think so. It's always been, you know, I sort of like have to, whenever I did math as well. Talking about math, we talk about math a lot. This is scary. I would build sort of like, I would build the systems for working out the mathematical equations in my head, and they would be like these 3-dimensional things that I had to build, because I think I'm numerically dyslexic or something. I don't know. I'm so bad at math, you know. So I would like build these things, and I would be pretty good at mental arithmetic, better than my cousin who went off and studied physics and something at Imperial College London, one of the best universities in the world, you know.
Well, you know, Spencer, I make the point to say to my students, especially on my end of things as an interactive design specialist, like I'm teaching them math and logic visually, you know, and I think that there's a portion of that even in just general design.
Yeah.
I think it's inherent to the discipline, right? And especially when you look at the Swiss minimalists, you know, they love that stuff.
Right, yeah, you know, I mean, information architect is and systems designer is something that is normally the language of interaction design, right? But no, we're all information architects, you know. If something is and you can look at design as a piece of architecture almost in the way that you know, from a hierarchical point of view, you organize all of that information, you know. It's sort of like gotta work, otherwise we're doing it wrong, right?
Right. So switching gears a little bit, where'd you get your master's, and what was that program like?
So I got my Bachelor of Arts at the University of Westminster, and didn't really, it was in graphic information design, and I went there because I was intrigued by the title, and it had a little bit more of a theoretical content than a traditional bachelor's program. But by the time I'd finished, I just felt like I still felt really hungry. I didn't for knowledge, I didn't really like the professors there, apart from the guy that I had in my last year. So I decided to do the masters, and I did my masters at St Martin's College of Art and Design, which is part of the University of Arts, London. And St Martin's is, I mean, it's up there with the Royal College of Art as one of the premier masters programs in the country, Europe, the world. You know, it's really, but it has an awful. I mean, it's an art school, right? That is it. It's but you're mixing with really interesting people when you're there as well. So they've got an amazing fashion program. You know, many of the British fashion greats, Alexander McQueen, people like that, graduated from St Martin's. So, you know, it's this rich melting pot of weirdness and British design school sort of mentality. I mean, when I was there, the place was, I remember showing my parents around, you know, because they were so proud of me, and I was showing them around, and they were like, God, this place is a shithole. It's just falling apart, and you know, and it's like, yeah, it is a little bit, but it was such a potent sort of like sandpit for creativity. It was a great program. It was a program.
Got character. The campus has character.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, the University of Arts is in London is made up of like maybe six or seven, maybe more than that, different sort of like art schools. There's Chelsea, there's lots of different art schools, but they've sort of like consolidated it into one big building in King's Cross, or the St Martin's has. But we were sort of like broken up between a couple of old buildings, and in London you sort of like have to go wherever, you know, you can find space. So we were in this wonderful Art Deco sort of like office building squeezed between I don't know, a Gap and somewhere else, you know,
right,
in the middle of London. It's now an H&M, which is really weird, you know. But I remember going into the provost's office, and it was just the most beautiful walnut veneer lined,
of course,
sort of like building. But yeah, it was great. The program, you had to have a portfolio entry to get in, but you also had to write a paper about what you wanted to your program, your study program that you wanted to propose. So it was an idea. It was research based. And you basically wrote a paper saying, this is what I want to do with the next 2 years of my life. I want to look into this. And then what they did is they fixed you up with certain people within the organization that could facilitate that, whether it was your thesis that you were writing or whether it was the visual stuff that you were doing. So there weren't really any classes as such. We just got on with the work. And there was a new guy running it the year that I started, who sort of like just knew everybody. So, you know, I had letterpress classes with Phil Baines. I had typography classes with God, I can't remember his name now. You know, these great British designers, or young Turks coming up in the world, you know. And I'll sort of say to my students, oh, you know, I'll show them great British typography. And it's like, oh, yeah, I went to university with him. Not in the terms of bragging, but, or went to university with him, or I was taught by him while I was at St Martin's. It just had that sort of, it was like a magnet for these wonderful people to sort of like come into. And yeah, it was good. And it was really well situated. You could sort of like do anything you wanted to do there. Very freeform.
So after your master's and this experience, this freeform experience you're talking about, where I feel like you just got to do a lot of living and experimenting and just kind of go with the flow, which, you know, sounds great to me because I had an extremely structured master's program that I went through. And
you went to SCAD, didn't you?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I got a scholarship to go to SCAD, and it was on, 10-week quarter system basically.
Right.
And it was very structured and a lot of rigidity, but within those limits, as you know, you can develop some really amazing stuff within that amount
Sure.
of time.
Sure. Sure.
So you graduate, you move
Graduation.
on, and do you enter the industry or do you go right into
Yeah,
teaching?
yeah, no, well, it was weird. It was St. Martin's after going to the University of Westminster and feeling like I hadn't really been pushed by my professors and feeling that I was different from a lot of people there.
Yep.
I went to St. Martin's and felt much more at home there. And seriously, the best thing I ever did, I always say to my students, do not ever not think about doing a master's. It's great, but it did sort of like fuck me up because I didn't want to, after I got out of it, I didn't want any ordinary job working in the industry. I didn't want, a lot of the people that I graduated from the University of Westminster were working at publishing houses, were working, doing sort of like Mac jockeys, really. It was sort of,
Production work.
yeah, not necessarily production work. They were designers. They were, but it was sort of like, a lot of them worked. There's a British publishers which is a worldwide publishers now, called Dorling Kindersley. They do a lot of educational books. You sort of like recognize them. They've got a white page with these beautiful photographed objects, beautifully designed books. So a lot of them were working there, and it was like, oh, what are you working on? It was like, yeah, I'm working on a book on motorcycles, but I'm running in type and I'm doing this, and then I'm cutting it out in Photoshop, and it's like, God, I don't want to do that. So I've done my master's. Part of my master's was the paper that I wrote to get in was about, I was really interested in bringing more senses into the communication model than we'd been used to through mass media, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was, how do we bring taste in? How do we bring sound in? How do we bring, all these other senses in? So what I was looking into was sort of like, so how do we design a poster that then goes with a piece of music that then, because at that time it was before the internet existed, right? I'm showing my age here, only just, right? And now I don't know if there was a couple of pieces of software out there called Supercard and Hypercard, and they were like, you could link files, right? So it was sort of like multimedia sort of, and a lot of people were, and there's a lot of stuff happening at MIT, the Media Lab at MIT. There was a lot of stuff happening in Holland. There was a magazine called Mediamatic, which was looking at sort of like, interaction and whatever. So my thesis when I graduated from my master's was called Interactive Sensory Communication, right? We were looking at sort of like worlds of virtual reality. It was at that time, it was the first sort of like cusp of not the first peak of virtual reality, and then it sort of like died down. So
Well,
how to sort of like,
I mean, sorry to interrupt, but the conceptual was always there, but you couldn't execute because of the technology.
Yeah. I mean, I did some, part of the story is I did quite a lot of consultancy with various virtual reality startups. And I remember these very well-off guys that I went to see in a quite a really nice part of London. And they'd basically leased this like mansion house and filled it with all of the toys that they ever wanted. One of the guys was in finance, and obviously he had a lot of money. So they were looking at 3D sound. They were looking at 3D vision, but they didn't know how to share it with other people. So I would go in there and we'd play around with virtual reality, literally in a room stacked with processing power. There were these big towers, probably about the same processing power you've got on your iPhone now, but there was these big towers which would hum and sort of like, and then you put the goggles on and it was like, oh my God, all of this is producing this horrible blocky crap. You could it was 3-dimensional, and you could sort of like run around, and at the time it was amazing. But yeah, so the concept was there, and I'd done a lot of work with a professor of electrical engineering at Imperial College, who, one of my students at St. Martin's got in contact with me. One of my students ran a drawing class in his spare time, and the professor had come to a drawing class, and so one of my fellow students said, "Oh, I know this guy is working on this weird stuff, looking at sensory communication and whatever." And he was like, "Oh yeah, send him my way." So we'd go and talk to this professor of electrical engineering, and he was really into virtual reality, but at the cutting edge of it, so from an academic point of view. So we would talk about how to visualize the world's stock exchanges in terms of a wheat field, wheat blowing in the wind, rising and falling, and it was just like he was a poet,
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't want the normal job. So I was sort of like scraping around doing a lot of consultancy work for these companies, trying to get the message out there of what they were doing. They liked a lot of the work I was doing that I'd done for my master's, because it had come from that point of view of like, there were no books written on what I was studying when I was there, other than a book about MIT and a book about some performance artists and whatever that were doing interesting stuff. So it was really difficult to communicate that stuff to other people. Whether they were businessmen or whether they were fellow graphic designers, you'd try and talk about this stuff, and you'd say, well, yeah, it's going to be interactive. So if you touch this point here, it will take you off to another point somewhere over there, which we all understand now because of the internet, right? It's like, yeah, click on the link.
Yeah.
You're talking to designers, like, what's a link? What does that do? Does that take you to another page? And it's like, well, yeah, but it blows apart the concept of pages, and so it felt like I couldn't fit in to a standard job. And then I got a phone call one day from so in the English academic system, you have people called external examiners, and they come in basically to examine the standards of the university. So they examine the professors. They don't examine the students. They examine the professors to see if they're doing their job properly, and to see if any chosen degree program is at the same level as their peers, right?
Yeah.
And she was a really cool American woman, funny enough, even though I was in the UK, called Liz McQuiston, who's written a couple of books on agitation graphics and protest graphics.
Yeah.
But she was my external examiner, and I got a call from her one day, and she said, "I'm teaching at this university in London, and you've got your master's, right? And we're looking for somebody to teach graphic design. And with the American, I never, ever thought about becoming a professor. It was like, it was the last thing in my mind. I wanted to go out there and remember, I wanted to design record covers, but the record.
I'm with you though. I didn't set out to be a professor either. Yeah.
And sometimes, and I work with Greg Harrison, who was your old professor, and we say the same thing. I mean, he worked in advertising for years. I think sometimes it makes us better professors for the fact that we didn't want to be professors, and we went out and we did interesting things and did other things. And
exactly.
And I got into it to help pay the bills with the other consultancy stuff I was doing, because I wasn't on a steady income. I was just sort of like, moving around doing the stuff that was interesting me, doing freelance, album artwork, and going and working with some crazy musicians who were playing around with 3-dimensional audio and stuff like that, and she said, look, I think you'd be a really good fit here. The program chair is really interesting. We're trying to build a really interesting program here. Why don't you come in? And I'm like, oh, shit, what do I do? How do I teach these people? But I got bitten by the bug, and 20 something years later, I'm still doing it.
When did you come to the States?
Just over 10 years ago. So I came in the end of December, sort of like middle of December 2009. So I've been here about 10 years.
Is that when you started at Cal?
I started at Cal. So I did a year. I taught at Robert Morris. I was adjunct at Robert Morris I was doing some stuff at Grove City. Grove City were looking at doing a more academic, Grove City College, that is, sort of like visual communication program. That was
AKA software.
theory, yeah, and like the theory behind it, whatever. So I was going in and getting people that never picked up or the last time they picked up a pencil was in, I don't know, like second grade to draw something up.
Right.
But they loved it, you know. And then I was also doing, doing some industry stuff at CMU, you know, bits and pieces. But it was only adjunct stuff, and you know, part of the reason I moved to the States was to just rethink what I wanted to do with my career. You know, was it the design side I wanted to focus, or the education side I wanted to focus more in? Because it was sort of like, I don't know, you know, I'd been at the same university in London for a while, and it was, you know, I was the program chair for about the last 18 months that I was there, just to sort of like go out with a flash of glory and see if I could do anything with the you know, reinvigorate the program. But it was still, you know, so, you know, it was quite a while at the same place, and it was like, yeah, maybe I'm getting a bit bored of this, or maybe I want a fresh challenge. But I really missed the classroom. I missed that involvement you get when you're a full-time, you know, professor, and you get to see them in their first semester, and then you get to wave goodbye to them 4 years later when they've got this amazing, hopefully amazing portfolio, and off they go, you know. And when you're an adjunct, it's sort of like, hi, I'm Spence, you know, I'll be with you for the next 15 weeks or whatever, and then I'll never see you again.
Right. So you came to the States, you've been here for a while, you're teaching at Cal U, and, you know, but you were in Pittsburgh already.
Yeah, yes. So
why
I met my wife in London, but she is originally from Pittsburgh. So she was working and studying in London, and she was sort of like, we would come over and visit. She was homesick. We actually got married over here, and then went back to England and lived some more. And you know, I was over one Christmas. She was getting homesick. I mean, her family has always been really important to her. She was getting homesick, and London is a tough place to live. You know, it's a really fast-paced, quite aggressive city, and we were sort of like getting a little bit tired of it. And I was over for Christmas, and this was in the days when I used to smoke. I was out on the back porch of my brother-in-law's having a cigarette, looking at these beautiful trees, thinking, what the fuck am I doing in London? Why am I going through this? Why am I getting angry every day? Get out my way, get out my way. I've got to get to work, you know? And relishing the moments when I could, we had this great place just before we moved here where you could actually walk to work through Regent's Park. And it was like, oh my God, this is wonderful, you know? But I could have this every day if I moved to Pittsburgh. So yeah, we moved out. I mean, it was a huge change for a city boy. You know, I spent most of my life in London, and then you come here and it's like, whoa, a lot of trees and a lot of anything else, you know.
Well, I'm glad you moved here. It's a great place to live, to raise a family, to start a career, to sustain a career.
Yeah, you know, and the design scene here is good. It's interesting. There's a lot of stuff going on, you know.
And there's some good history. You know, I've always enjoyed the design community here, and you know, it's just great to network with people. You know, it's funny. The other day, I'm in my front yard, minding my own business. You know, fiddling around with the plants, and UPS driver stops by, drops something off, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, thanks. Yeah, I really appreciate it." And he's like, "RJ?" And I'm like, what? What? I mean, you know my name because it says it on the package, but you're saying it like you know me. And sure enough, it was someone that I knew from back in the day, from when I was on the AIGA board in the mid 2000s. And, you know, he didn't get out of design. He's just decided to pick up some hours with UPS on the side there. So it was pretty cool to be able to have those friendships and not see someone for a decade and just kind of
Yeah, it is.
right
I
where
mean,
you left off.
I just enjoy the world, you know. I you know, and you've known Greg Harrison down at Cal U as well for many years, you know. I mean,
More years than I care to admit.
yeah, you know, and there's nothing like weird abstract conversations with other designs about
Right.
whatever, you know. Um, but
Yeah. Next time you talk to Greg, you can tell him how much of a pain in the ass I was, you know, or how
oh,
much how much of a pain in the ass I thought I was to him,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because of wanting to have questions like that, like trying to just get as much knowledge and insight as possible.
Yeah, it is. It is weird, you know. I haven't had that many students that ask me questions that make me stop and think. You know, there's a few around that do that. You know, and I was always. My mother always said, you know, ask as many questions as you possibly can. Question everything. Don't believe anything. I mean, she was an anarchist and a communist, but you know, but it was like, don't believe anything that the man says. Don't trust the man. You know, so, but it goes for everything. And I if if a student could take one thing away from me, that would be it. Just question
Question
everything.
Absolutely.
Question everything. You know, if because they come in and it's into typography class and they look at, we've got a banned typeface posters up on the wall, which makes me feel a little uncomfortable because why would anybody ban a typeface? You know what I mean?
Right.
And the Comic Sans is on there. And it's like, oh, Comic Sans, yeah, it's the worst typeface in the world. And it's like, yeah, but who told you that?
Right.
Well, everybody says so. And it's like, well, why? Why is it the worst type? You know,
You ask
why is Helvetica the best typeface? You know, I mean, it's like, um, I also, you know, it's weird that students will come to you and expect answers, and it's like there isn't, there really ain't no answers.
Well,
And,
in terms of answers, I got some questions for you.
right.
So, you know, so you had seniors this year. They graduated. It feels like, I don't know about you, but for me, it's like the semester just kind of went out on a whimper.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of so this was a unique year for me in that I'm adjuncting at Point Park University, and I'm helping write their curriculum. But then my day job, I work at the University of Pittsburgh, and then I also had the opportunity to teach a brand management course in their business college, right?
Right.
So, you know, I've only ever taught in art programs. So to transition into a business college, it was really just thrilling. I had such a great time. And despite the fact that like there wasn't any cross-pollination between the two classes, both sets of students were saying they felt like they had their careers canceled, right? So the Pitt students had, and Point Park students, they had internships canceled or postponed, delayed, reconfigured. They've had job offers rescinded, and they're just sitting at home right now.
Right.
And it's like they have all this potential, all of this energy. They want to hit the ground running and, you know, work 14 to 16 hours a day to really get their career on a good foot. And that opportunity was taken away from them. And it wasn't like just a fleeting moment. Like, this is going to be a long time before they're able to actually not even recalibrate, but calibrate to the new economy, the new version of it. So for those students out there that feel like their futures or their careers have been canceled, what would you tell them to, you know, kickstart their career and get it moving? Because even in this period of time right now, I still think that there is a lot of work to be done and a lot of good work, and that enthusiasm and energy that they have can be put to good use.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think everybody's been looking for other channels. I mean, we're talking on Zoom at the moment. I'd never used Zoom. Well, actually, I had, because we were doing job interviews for a position down at Cal, which was the first time I used Zoom. So I felt like I was comfortable for it. But somebody had to put that system together. You know, I hadn't really used Slack. and I did a deep dive into Slack because it was like, I think this could be the answer for how I'm going to teach my skills, my classes, because it's collaborative, or it can be collaborative. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think good designers, even though the way that we teach design at Cal is from a thought process. You know, it doesn't really matter what something looks like. I don't care what typeface you're using. I don't want to really have a conversation about the typeface unless it's a completely wrong decision, right, that you've made. We're thinkers, and we think in a truly open and a truly flexible way. And I think that the position we're in at the moment requires that more than ever. You know, whenever the world gets back to normal, it's not going to be the normal that we were used to before. It's not going to be the same normal, right? I think the economy might be fundamentally different. I think the way that we work may be fundamentally different. I mean, my wife works in corporate America, and she was basically told by her HR person that they might not be going back to the office, you know, that they might be working from home full time from now on, you know, because of whether it's at the moment their, you know, businesses are hurting because they're not making the money that they did, or whether it's because, oh shit, we can do it. You've just proved to us that we can all do it, right?
We've been saying it for years. We can work from home and be just productive.
Yeah. I mean, I have struggled somewhat. I don't think a graphic design degree can be got online. From my experience, I think, you know, nothing beats the interaction that you get in the classroom. Nothing beats the face-to-face critiques and whatever. But there are things that can be done when I thought, no, they can't be done, right? So I think it's made us rethink. And there's got to be people out there that are going to design those new systems, whether it's from a architecture point of view, whether it's from the interface point of view, whatever point of view, you know, we've got to have designers to shape those things.
Right.
I think we're also, we have this sort of like entrepreneurial spirit. We have this free thinking entrepreneurial spirit. And that might see us through as well. I mean, the fact that, I mean, if this had happened when I was at university, I would have been truly fucked. You know, I had my physical portfolio that I would go around to design offices with. I might have mailed them a letter saying, can I have a job, please? Can I have a job, please? But then I had to go around with my physical portfolio. We don't have to do that anymore. You can send me your URL. I can look at whether it's your website or your Behance profile or whatever, and we can interact. We can have a Skype call. We can have a Zoom call. We can FaceTime. We can, you know, there's so many ways of interacting, and there's going to be so many newer ways of interacting, and all of those are going to have to be designed.
Right.
You know, so whether it's working for shaping the new world or being part of that new world and designing for people that are navigating that new world. I mean, I as long as industry doesn't do what it typically does in recession mode and cuts design and advertising spend, you know, if it actually thinks in a more expansive way and in a little bit more of a long-term way and say, look, we've got to dig ourselves out of this horrible big shitty hole that we're in.
Right.
And a way to do that is to communicate, is to market, is to get our PR going, is to design our messaging and take that and, you know, and decide what our new voice is going to be and our new brand is going to be. If they do that, then all of these kids are going to be in work doing this. It will be a massive overhaul. Is it really, really scary? You know, I remember graduating, you know, to tell you the truth, one of the reasons, there were two reasons why I did a master's. One, because I felt hungry for knowledge and I didn't like the professors. And two, I didn't want a job. I didn't want to sort of like go out there and, you know, because it's a scary prospect. It's sort of like, it's really grown up. And you know, so it's a scary time only because it's that fear of the unknown. You know? I mean, of course it's scary because
So, you know,
People
on that
die,
note,
you know, it's scary, and I don't mean to belittle that. And
sure.
we are living through a terrible time. You know, one of the things that I get my students to do an ongoing design journal where they have to log. Part of it is logging each week a piece of design or a piece of typography or a piece of whatever class are in color theory, you know, that interests them every week. So I switched over to a COVID-19 special edition where they had to log a piece of a piece of affirmative design that was out there that was a response to what was happening with the COVID. So whether it was a temporary hospital made out of shipping containers, whether it was a 3D printed mask, whether it was, you know, a piece of information graphics about this, that, or the other, you know, where design has the power to absolutely make a difference, whether it's saving lives, whether it's making the space where other people save lives a better space to inhabit, whether it's, you know,
well,
getting
create
messages
awareness,
across.
raise dialogue, open
All
up
of those, you
lines
know.
of thinking. Absolutely. So I absolutely want to do this again, but we've run out of time. And there was one thing that you said that I think is absolutely critical to what you and I both do as teachers, and that's, you know, whenever there's you know, we're in a new system, we're in a new paradigm, creating those new voices that define all of this newness, I think is absolutely critical.
Right.
And through critical thinking and objective research and, you know, just grinding on problems until we crack them and solve them, like that's going to help develop those new voices. And, you know, some of the students,
That flexibility that we as designers have to have of whether it's me in my freeform master's program or you in your rigid master's program, you know,
right.
we can thrive in any one of those environments. We thrive in any environment just because we're flexible and we're intelligent, and you know, and that should mean that we thrive now. It's that power to be flexible and to question everything.
And, you know, through that questioning, you learn failure, you learn experimentation, you get a thick skin, you become dogged and determined. And those are characters traits that are going to get us through this next phase of our lives.
And also, I guess that thing of, you know, what I was saying when students come to you expecting an answer, should it be red or should it be blue? I don't know. You know, try both, see what, you know, there is no one answer to what we're going through at the moment, you know, so try things and see if they work. You know, one of my maxims that I've adopted over the past couple of years is never say never. Just try it. Never say that Comic Sans is, you know, who knows? It might have a use somewhere. I think if you've got that flexibility and you need it more than ever to just sort of like, yeah, let's give it a go, see what happens.
Somewhere, someone.
Or what's that?
I was going to say, somewhere, someone is using wingdings in a very serious way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe, you know, if it makes a couple of people chuckle and you know, then what's wrong with that? I you know, who knows?
Well, this was great, Spencer. Thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we'll do this again soon.
All right.
Cool, man. All right, we'll check in with you. Take care.
Bye-bye.